Welcome, everyone. Today, we have the pleasure of our guest, Rose Simon Schwartz, from the Executive of the Spanish and Portuguese. She's going to speak to us about The Man in the White Sharkskin Suit, written by her friend. Go ahead, Rose.
Okay, hi everybody. Before we start, I just wanted to tell you that Doug Fagan, Lucette Lagnado's husband, was supposed to be with us today. He unfortunately is, a bit under the weather, so he couldn't attend. So we wish him a refuah shlema. And if you allow me, I would like to dedicate this session today to the memory of Lucette and to the refuah shlema of her husband, Doug. Thank you. So, The Man in the White Sharkskin Suit covers three major themes. One is a life in Egypt, then it's immigration, and the relationship Lucette had with her father. Lucette's stories it's a story of all the immigrants who had to leave the comfort of their own country for the unknown. It's the story of the hardship the immigrants in their new home. It is a story of the downfall of a proud boulevardier who neither adapted nor accepted his uprooting. It is a memoir of her father's fall from grace in the passage from Old Cairo, where he played poker with the king onto Rue Richer in France, where his family lived in a passportless limbo, to finally Brooklyn, where he was reduced to peddling ties on the streets and in the subway of New York. Lucette explains this part of her life with great sadness. It is heartbreaking, actually, to see such a proud, arrogant man end up in a state of despair later on in his life. From the onset, the author gives us a very good idea of the type of man her father was. So if you allow me, Cairo had a million diversions, and Leon took advantage of every one of them. He realized being single, venturing out every night and not returning until dawn. He ambled elegantly through the city in constant search of entertainment. Dining, dancing, and gambling were his great loves, and he wandered from restaurant to cafes to dance halls to casinos. So this really was her father. That's what he loved to do. So it makes it even harder for the reader to fathom how such a carefree, popular, illustrious man ended up in the way he did. And now I just want to read to you a quote that Doug sent me. Doug is Lucette's husband, and it covers two of the themes that I mentioned before. A decade after the overthrow of King Farouk, as Nasserism affected the flight of the Jews, the hollowing out of the Europeans, and the marginalization of the Coptic Christians, the Lagnados fled their native Cairo with regrets enough to last a lifetime, joining the second exodus to become stateless refugees in Paris and then immigrants in America. Really, Doug really says what it is. In the first few chapters, Lucette shares her life in Cairo and the special feelings she shared with her father. What he did, perhaps by way of revenge, was to lavish me of all the tenderness and affection he was thought incapable of giving. And I left the care of the captain, she called him the captain, basked and reveled in his love, found his quiet smile more comforting than my mother's elegant phrases, and experienced none of the harshness and imperious manner that had so alienated my older siblings, in particular my sister. She had this very, very special relationship with her father, and she liked to talk about her father a lot. It was, for her, it was something that's quite special. And then came the departure from Egypt. The last night in the country, in her country of birth, is described so vividly that we ourselves are brought back to our own last night of our country of birth. And this is a beautiful passage. If you allow me for just a couple of minutes, I'm going to read this package. This passage is really wonderful. Sorry. Okay. On our last night in Egypt, my father took me for a walk. Hand in hand, we made our way across the boardwalk, passing one beach after another. Every once in a while, he would stop and turn and face the sea. He didn't say a word. There were countless cafes, and even in March, we could see nighttime revelers relishing the breeze of an Alexandria evening, smoking and drinking beer or arak. My father vetted on the very last cafe. There's a lot of sadness, a lot of feelings and emotions throughout Lucette's book, and this particular passage should be close to most of us who have left our country of birth. Finally, the Lagnados end up in Brooklyn, New York. The start was very, very difficult for the whole family. New surroundings, new language, new weather, the need to go seek help from a Jewish organization, etc. Page after page, we read about the tribulations of new immigrants and how slowly despair sets in. We see the start of Leon's breakdown. That's a very moving passage. Actually, for those who have read it, you will feel it. Worst still, Dad had become oblivious to his own appearance. For the first time in his life, he was dressing sloppily and paying almost no attention to the way he looked. Mrs. Kirshner was struck by my father's battered, impoverished garb. Once the essence of style as he ambled through Cairo in his immaculate white suits, he was described in her notes as shabbily dressed. What about all the clothes in the 26 suitcases, she wondered. Although she was only 7 years old, Lucette was quite astute. She realized her father was suffering, and she wanted to help him. She found her own way of getting close to him. My father had become so much more reclusive since coming to America. And I, at 7 going on 8, had devised a way to penetrate his hard shell. It wasn't by comforting him head on, like Suzette was her sister, or defying him as my brothers were doing. It wasn't even by engaging in idle chit-chat, like the men of the Congregation of Love and Friendship. Rather, we grew closer when I became his prayer companion. So she found a way of getting close to this man who was shutting up. He was just shutting down completely. He was alienating himself from the rest of the world, from pain. This chapter of Leon was her father, of Leon's life ended as tragically and as sadly as it had been since the departure from Egypt, alone, confused, and in an elder care home. Doug told me the following one day. We were talking about the book. By sheer force of will, by the magic and deftness of her writing and her reporting and her inner journeys through her own memories, she was able not only to recreate and bring back the lost world of Cairo, European Cairo, her parents' Cairo, but in a way she was able to recreate and bring back the life her parents themselves. And Doug and I shared the same point of view on Lucette's book. Through the pages of her books, her parents were able to live anew, that their lost world of Egypt really wasn't lost after all. And this book allowed her to bring them back on this earth. Lucette immortalized Leon and Edith. Edith was her mother. To all her readers, her father, Leon Lagnado, will always be prowling the streets and savoring the casinos and nightlife and praying in the synagogues of Cairo forever. And Doug said to me, to bring your parents back to life from the dead is an extraordinary thing. And that's exactly what Lucette did with that book. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Very nice. Does anybody want to start with questions? You can unmute yourselves if you'd like to ask a question. Here's Sandra Cuckoo first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rose. Even the way you described it was infused with so much emotion and feeling that I'm sure everybody can relate. I remember a part where she talked about this woman who was a socialite and who, you know, remember that she invited a whole, like the whole community, like all of us, every Friday night, and they would play cards or they would talk about the news or whatever. And that woman, Lucette quotes her as saying that it was the soul, the spirit of Maimonides that stopped that Italian general from going any further into Africa. And that was the turning point. I remember that part in the book and a lot of other things. And whatever you read, I remember exactly reading that and the images. She was able to bring the images so much alive.
That's right. That's right. Her descriptions are so vivid. You really feel, when she describes her father in Cairo, you feel you're walking through Cairo. When she describes her apartment on Malika Nazli Street, you feel that you are part of her surroundings on Malika Nazli Street. So
they called him Boulevardier, remember?
Yes, yes. And she loved to speak to him as a boulevardier. When she talked of her father, she said the boulevardier of Cairo.
And just quickly, I met her at, I think Irene had a presentation of her in the library of Côte Saint-Luc. And I went up to her and she signed the book. And I told her, you know what that number 26 stands for? You know why your father chose specifically 26 suitcases? She says, no, why? I say 26 in Hebrew is the name of God. It's the same gematria. She got up and she hugged me. Thank you for saying that. I never knew. She passed away.
Yes, she passed away very young, unfortunately. It was a great loss. It was a great loss.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Sandra. Vicky has a question. Go ahead, Vicky.
There are so many books on immigration and all of us, you know, all these people who moved. How does this book stand for you as different than other books? Why should we read this book?
That's a very good question, Vicky. Why this book? Because this book does not only talk about immigration, does not only talk about the hardships of immigrants, but it talks about a relationship, a very special relationship between father and daughter. And I think this is very moving, and that you could see it throughout the book. And I think this is why I personally would say it's a must read. It's the descriptions that are vivid. It's the special relationship that make it different from the other books on immigration, emigration. That's why.
I'd like
Thank you. That's good.
Hi, Rose.
Hi.
Thank you
Hi.
very much. I have a comment and a question. What I found intriguing was the fact that she found her father's values that were brought over from his world sort of hampered the progress that she was looking for in the new world, in the US, in terms of her going out to work or in terms of her getting further education. But she treats it with tenderness rather than with condemnation. Did you find that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. She was very, very honest about the effect of her father's behavior and state of mind. But yes, absolutely, she did not condemn it. She felt for it. She fell for it. She felt her emotions, his emotions. But yes, you're right. Absolutely, that's very good point you're bringing up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yvonne. Andre Haim, and then we'll go to Albert.
Yeah, I liked the book because it was written very simply with simple words. And I was amazed at the life in Cairo. Did you know that this gentleman didn't have an office? He did his transaction in hotels. He used to take the little girl with him, buy her a Coca-Cola while he was having a whiskey, and his friends also. And there they would make their transactions. And then before leaving, he wanted to put some jewelry into cans because he used to buy cans and sell them somewhere else. So he went to the person who made the cans for him, and he asked him to put the jewelry in the can. But in the end, he decided against that, not to take it, or I forgot what happened. So he didn't take the jewelry in the can. But it was really révélatoire. I didn't know that some people who had the great businesses didn't have an office. They dealt in hotels, in restaurants, and the little girl used to go with him all the time.
Yeah,
I loved it. I loved that book. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is what was so special also, was because she was in the book, she's explaining the way some people did business. He was doing well, he was successful. For him, it was not important to have an office. For him, it was the interpersonal relationships he had with all his clients, with the people he met. And yes, you sit down, you have a whiskey, you eat, and then you talk business, you do some business. Yeah, it was very good. Yeah, you're right, Andre.
Thank you. Albert, go ahead.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Rosie, for that most interesting presentation. I know that the book is about her father. I remember reading the book many years ago, but I can't remember if she brings in her mother into the book at all. And I wonder if she explains it, whether if she did or not. And if she did not, if she explains why she never spoke about her mother. She puts all the emphasis on her father. And the other thing I just want to bring up is if you could explain to your audience what's the meaning of a sharkskin suit and its impact of people who wore it in Egypt.
Maybe you can do that, Albert. Maybe you could do that, but I will answer your first question.
Okay.
And then please you do that. I think you would do it better than I can. She does talk about her mother quite briefly, but her mother did not play a major role in her personal life. However, Lucette wrote a second book, and that was on the life of Edith. I personally did not find it as good as the first one, but she wanted to concentrate that first book on her love and affection and her feelings towards her father. But she does talk about Edith. She does talk about the some passages about her and her life and how they grew up on Malika Nazli, but it wasn't the main purpose of her book. So she concentrated a second book on her mother.
Okay.
Yeah. So you want to explain what sharkskin suit is?
Yeah, sure. You know, the noblesse in Egypt used to have a suit that was completely white and made of this material that was rather silky. I don't know how many of you have touched the skin of a shark, because that's exactly what it feels like. It's like smooth and rough at the same time. It's silky, and it's got a little rough feel to it. And the suit would be like, it would be like $1 million suit. Like when you wore that suit for certain occasions, be it a wedding or a special invitation, you were like a distinguished person. And the material was, like I said, the skin of a shark. Silky and rather rough as well. It was a very smooth feeling. My father had just a jacket of it, not the full suit, but only a jacket that he wore with other pants. So it was only on very special occasions that people wore that white sharkskin outfit.
Go ahead, Gigi. Thank you, Albert. Gigi, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Okay, so I have lots of things to say. I'll try to stick to one thing right now, and later on, hopefully, I'll be able to get to 2 or 3 other things. One is that Lagnado, the author, says that life on Malika Nazli, quote, was not simply a place, but a state of mind. That past was imbued with, quote, humanity, mercy, and compassion, tenderness, and grace. And I take great exception to that claim. Yes, she sees it through the prism of a child that was doted on, the child of a man in his old age who finally matured somewhat. I'm sure that people were very, very pleasant with each other, maybe not the husband and wife, but in general, and you see this time and again among immigrants. Oh, back home, people were so polite. Oh, back home, people were so warm. Da, 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 da. When I look at the actual facts, I say, my goodness, a 14-year-old girl was married off to a 50-year-old man. Her sister, 16 years old, was desperate for a divorce, had to give money, plus give her infant daughter. Her Alexandra's husband sells his baby and adding at the souk and adding insult to injury. The man never even discussed his intention with his wife, the baby's mother. And that same attitude in which the man takes these big decisions. So I'm just saying, culturally, looking at it from a North American perspective, not even consulting with his wife is evident in Leon and Edith's relationship. We see this when she wants to accompany her husband to the jail where Suzette is being held. He does not even explain his perfectly good rationale to go there with a friend as opposed to going with his wife, but simply tells her to remain behind. And then you have Alexandra, 18 years old, grown up in a convent, the only child of rich parents, who lands up marrying the first man she meets, a Jewish guy, much older, a shallow man, a fraud, and her parents abandon her to a lifetime of suffering. And the author does not dwell on these things. She simply passes over them. She says, this was part of it, this was part of it, this was part of it, but then claims it was a culture and a society of compassion and mercy and tenderness. I don't think so. This was your particular experience. You remember the past as one of being loving and sweet and warm and etc. And many people do that. They refer to the past as a great time because, one, they delete all the negative and they concentrate on the positive. And don't forget, that was home. That was, especially if they were younger. So that part bothers me a whole lot. Her style, and I'd like to talk about her style a little later on, but she does end with the fact that the legacy her father has left the family is his honor and personal sense of personal responsibility because he paid his debts. And she feels that is a very noble legacy that he left to his children. May I say another thing while I'm on it, and then perhaps a third thing later on? Do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead. After that, I'd like Albert to share his photo. Thanks.
Okay, so I shall go on to my second point, and then later on, I'd like to say something about the style. So I don't know how many of you have seen or read the play Death of the Salesman by Arthur Miller, but yep. Leon is exactly that salesman. He plays the man. Not that I don't have feelings for him, and I do, and I understand. I do see him the way his youngest saw him, but I also see him the way his wife saw him, and his the son with whom he did not get along, who put him into the institution for the elderly, I guess, and the eldest daughter. So it's not just a simple thing. What a sweet man. No. Anyway, the father plays the man. He puts on a facade of charm to become the consummate salesman. Just as in Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, he must sell himself, even to himself, to be successful. He must believe in all of this. But the real man barely exists. He is the adolescent dreamer who marries a doll, practically buys a doll, that when broken is discarded. He wins superficial and temporary relationships, but loses potentially meaningful ones, except for the one with his daughter. That's the only meaningful relationship. He had one with his mother, maybe with one of his one sister, but that's it. So I think that he was a romantic, not a realist. He believed in his own mythic quality, and that was his greatness, but also his downfall. And in fact, in the very introduction, which I find is a brilliant introduction to the book, we have a few themes. I don't know where I wrote this. One is suspense. Is this relationship going to work? Is he ever going to get married, etc.? There's romance, but there's also the question of truth. And that brings up the whole story. She looks at the picture, the photograph of her parent, and she knows that it was based on an illusion. So the diminutive wife had to stand on a camouflage pedestal to be able to look like she's not a doll, but she's almost an equal to this giant of a man. Okay, so that thing of truth comes up again when the older of the two brothers, César, gets a job in France to sit in the front row of the Folie Légère to cheer and to initiate applause. And he says, we read, the showgirls, quote, sparkled and smiled and performed with exceptional grace and agility, but up close, they were a lot older, more jaded, more ordinary than he could have ever imagined. So I do have a whole lot of other examples, but the question of truth and comes up, and I think it's a major theme here. And the truth is, your particular experience is your truth. Your sisters may have a very, very different version. Your brother, the younger of the two, probably has an aversion to the father and would not have too much sympathy for him. The way it's written, yes, it's poignant, it's tender, and that comes up in the style, which later on I can mention if you want. So I left out a whole lot of things, but that's basically it. The question of truth, the question of this man who believed in his own myth, which, as I said, made him a success in one country, a failure in another, and his despair is, I think, to a great degree based on the fact that for the first time he has to face a reality. He doesn't live this dream world, this illusory world. He can't live that anymore. And that is very sad. It comes in his old age. And
Thank you, Gigi.
I don't want to criticize him or judge him because, you know, he's great and he's not great. And I do feel for him. Okay.
Thank you, Gigi. Let's give Albert a chance to share a photo that he mentioned he had at the beginning of the.
Grace, I have the photo on my screen. I have the photo on my screen, but I just don't know how to do screen
You have
share.
to click on share screen.
I did that. Okay, share content. I'm on a tablet, by the way, so maybe slightly different from a laptop, but I have share screen.
Yeah.
Then I have screen photos. No.
Yeah, choose the photo.
Photos,
that you have
okay. Open. Yeah, and then it says allow Zoom to access your photos from settings. Change settings. No, I don't know what to do with that.
So you don't have the photo minimized on your.
I have the picture on my screen, but I don't know how to show it. It's an amazing picture with Rose and Lucette Lagnado and Irene Buenavida. And myself.
Do you want to email it to me?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I'll do that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. And then, Grace, you can send it to us.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that.
Sure. For sure.
Albert, put it on your face.
If I may.
Sorry?
No, let him send it to me. Let him send it to me, and then someone else can ask a question in the meantime.
Gigi, if I can just mention, you summed it up so beautifully. You really brought it into perspective, you know, a different angle. But I think the book is, overall, it's not about this man and judging him as opposed to somebody else or even her mother or all their shortcomings. It was about their existential circumstance. It's about the immigrant experience. And in order for it to be palpable and real for us, because we were not there, she has to bring in all the elements. So, and I think the facts were what they were. The miracle was that they made it out of there. But the truth was that it wasn't all rosy, but at least, look, she became a world famous journalist. I mean, there were a lot of good things too. And that's life.
No, I don't disagree with you, but
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you at
May
all.
may I just make a comment, Gigi, please? May I just make a comment? You said it at the beginning,
Rose.
and let us not forget that she is writing. Whatever feelings, emotions, perceptions she mentions were through the eyes of a child. So when you said how awful the surroundings were, how terrible, for a child, his whole world is his home. And no matter what happens to neighbors, so one should not lose sight of the fact that whatever she idealized her oh, there we go.
You can continue talking there, Rose.
Okay. She idealized her father as a child. Later on, might have, her
I agree.
views.
That was my point. She writes the story from the prism of.
Well, this is it. So there is
childhood.
no real need to look how terrible that society was in order to appreciate the book or to say it is wrong what she said. It's just her opinion as a child.
I'm not saying that she was wrong. I am saying that this is her perspective. She doesn't dwell on these other parts because she feels the tenderness and compassion and the mercy was the overwhelming feelings and was part of the culture, was a great part of the culture. But as an objective reader, I see that no, it wasn't such a culture of compassion, etc. This was her great experience. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you. Albert, do you want to explain the picture? I'll put it back on. Go ahead, Albert. Unmute yourself.
Maybe Rose, you want to do that since you're in the picture as well and you're presenting? I mean, I don't want to throw away from you.
Yeah, when Lucette came to Montreal, she loved to go to this, where was it, Albert? This patisserie here somewhere. I can't remember.
Le Duc de Lorraine?
No, it wasn't Le Duc de Lorraine. But anyway, patisserie like the Duc de Lorraine. And that patisserie reminded her of a patisserie we had in Cairo called Gropi. So whenever she would come to Montreal, she would say, I want to go to Gropi. So we would take her. So these are people who are part of the Association of Jews of Egypt. So we have Lucette who's there. She's very happy. She was quite healthy at the time. She spent many, many years being very healthy. Towards the end, her health failed her. And you have, you all know Irene next to her, then Albert with a little beard looking much, much younger than he is now. Sorry, Albert. And then we have behind Lucette, we have Vivian Skinazi Silver that we all know also. She's made a few presentations. And the sad part is that 3 of the people present in these photos are 4 are no longer with us. So it's a good memory of a good time we had when one of the times Lucette came to Montreal.
And the tall man behind you, Rosie, is Asher Cohen, who was a long-time member of our synagogue.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions before we conclude?
Can I say something about
Who is the
Hold on. Go ahead, Sheila.
who is the person in the picture on the bottom right? Please.
Oh, that's Mireille Galanti. She's a member of the Association of Jews of Egypt. Her name is Mireille Galanti.
The one that has her hands on her chin on her
Her
hand.
chin, that's right. Yeah, that's Mireille
Oh my
Galante.
God, she looks so much somebody I know.
Oh, I
Okay.
see.
And
And
the
right
man-
behind her is one of the founders of the Association of Jews from Egypt. His name was Moshe Sadeh.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Moshe Sadeh
It
made
was
Aliyah.
wonderful. It was wonderful listening to you. Thank you. Bye.
Moshe
Thank
Sadeh
you.
made Aliyah to Israel, and he fought in the Haganah during the War of Independence. And he was a prominent member of Bnei Brit here in Montreal. Unfortunately, he passed away, together with Asher Cohen as well.
What year was this picture taken?
Oh my
Honestly, I
God.
don't remember. It's been a while, I guess. Eh? If you said I
Yeah,
look so young here.
I don't remember, but it must have been a good 10 years ago, I would say,
Yeah.
maybe
Oh, wait.
8, 10.
I had a beard in those days, so it must have been
Yeah.
quite a while ago.
Yeah, 8, 10 years ago.
Rosie,
Yeah.
you spoke about Gropi. I enjoyed a lot reading the times in the book where he would gather with his friends doing deals or just schmoozing at that restaurant. It was the coolest place to be. And how she described the polyglot atmosphere. People spoke French, Italian, Arabic, English, all in one. And it gave you, it's a part of history, you know. She described the place at the time. And
That's
if
right.
we have reactions as North Americans, and you know, it just shows that it's interesting to have people's testimonials, because it brings out all these reactions in us and the differences and
That's
the
right.
similarities.
When I think that here in Quebec, we're fighting over 2 languages and we're not able to get along with 2 different people speaking 2 different languages. In Egypt, we got along speaking 150 different languages, and we all, you know, got along and we all spoke our own language, and yet we respected each other. So it's really quite a different.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Rose. On behalf of the Sisterhood, we want to thank you for a wonderful lecture on the wonderful book from your wonderful friend. And hopefully soon we will have another book review, and the Sisterhood will continue with their events every so often on Tuesdays. And we'll take off with a lot more events in September. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Rose, again. And have an amazing
Grace?
day.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts about the book. Thank you.
Absolutely. You honored us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rose.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice summer, everybody.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.